You remember the moment, even if you pretend you don't. A hand you trusted, a voice you believed, a promise you never questioned. You offered something pure, something unguarded, and the world answered with a quiet knife. It didn't shout. Betrayal rarely does. It simply waited until you leaned in, until your softness left you exposed, and then it carved a lesson into the flesh of your spirit. You didn't break that day, but you learned what it means to bleed without making a sound. In that silence, a strange awareness flickered, a recognition that your tenderness had become a doorway for someone else's convenience. The exhaustion that followed did not come from anger. It came from the weight of always giving more than you received. You kept showing up, kept opening your chest, kept offering warmth to hands that only knew how to take. You thought endurance made you noble. Instead, it left you drained, hollowed, quietly resentful of your own generosity. There is a particular fatigue that grows inside a good person, the fatigue of being used as if kindness were an infinite reservoir. You felt that fatigue like a stone under your ribs, heavy, cold, immovable. Musashi once observed that a warrior who moves with too much softness will not see the blade until it rests at his throat. He did not scorn tenderness, but he watched how undisciplined warmth allowed enemies to step through emotional thresholds they had not earned. He saw men lose battles, not because they lacked skill, but because they lacked boundaries. Their hearts were open landscapes, easy to trespass, ripe for exploitation. Excess softness was not morality. It was vulnerability, misunderstood as virtue. And the world, sharp and unforgiving, recognized it instantly. Eventually, the revelation finds you. A heart unarmored invites the blade, not by fate, not by misfortune, but by design. People who sense your unguarded nature will test the limits of what you'll accept. They will measure the distance between your kindness and yourself. And if that distance is too wide, they will walk as far as they please. So you begin to feel something shift, a small spark, a necessary hardness, not born from bitterness, but from the need to survive without surrendering your core. You feel the first forming of armor, not to cage your heart, but to give it shape. This is the moment your new self begins. There is a difference between going numb and choosing silence. Most people never learn that difference. They collapse inside themselves, mistaking emotional shutdown for strength. But numbness is not control. It is abandonment of the self. Discipline, however, is different. It is a coldness you choose, a deliberate narrowing of the emotional doorway so that not every wind can enter and scatter your inner order. You begin to sense this distinction the moment you step back from the noise and realize how much of your suffering came from being too accessible. You have been overwhelmed by emotional noise for far too long. The demands of others, the opinions, the guilt, the invisible debts you were pressured to pay. You felt the world tug at you from every direction, each person insisting they needed just a little more of you. You tried to hold yourself together, but fragments of your peace kept breaking off, piece by piece, until there was barely anything left. The chaos of emotions, yours, theirs. Everyone's wrapped around your thoughts like thick smoke, suffocating clarity, drowning instinct, muting the voice inside that once guided you effortlessly. Musashi practiced a kind of deliberate distance that confused those around him. They mistook his quiet for coldness, his detachment for disinterest. Yet it was neither. It was precision. He understood that a warrior who lets every emotion spill outward becomes predictable, slow, easy to manipulate. So he cultivated stillness, a controlled coldness that kept his mind sharp and his reactions unclouded. He knew that stepping back was not withdrawal, but positioning. A swordsman does not swing wildly. He observes, he measures, he waits. That is the same posture you must learn within your own chest. The revelation arrives like a low hum. Beneath your breath, coldness can be conscious and compassionate. You do not need to care less. You simply need to protect the places where your care is stored. You do not close the gates. You choose who may enter. Emotional discipline is not an exile of feeling, but a sanctuary built with intention. You begin to realize that guarding your energy does not make you cruel. It makes you wise. And in that wisdom, your presence becomes sharper, cleaner, truer. This is where selective emotional control is born. Not from fear, from clarity. A quiet fear lingers in the back of your mind as you change. The fear of going too far. The fear of losing the softness that once made you human. You worry that hardening your heart will turn you into something unrecognizable. A creature shaped only by defense, not by depth. This fear is natural. Every warrior who walks this path feels it at some point. The dread of becoming a cold ghost of themselves. A being defined only by walls and sharp edges. You look at your reflection and wonder, what if protecting myself turns me into someone I never wanted to be? Pain has a way of reshaping identity. Trauma does not whisper. It carves. It etches its script into your instincts, adjusting how you move, how you love, how you trust. Some wounds change posture. Others change philosophy. You've felt parts of yourself twist under the pressure of old memories, times when you loved too hard, forgave too quickly, or held on too long. Pain can distort you if you let it. It can trick you into believing that purity makes you weak, or that empathy is a liability. If you've begun to feel that shift, you are not alone. Many strong souls have felt themselves harden in ways that frightened them. Musashi lived in a world where violence was as common as rain, yet he did not let brutality corrode the chambers of his spirit. He fought, yes, but he fought from a place of equilibrium. His heart was not empty, it was focused. He learned how to be a blade without losing the hand that held it. He understood that true hardness is not hollow. It is disciplined. It is directed. He built a core that could withstand conflict without becoming defined by it. This was not detachment. It was mastery. You begin to realize that the goal is not to erase your sensitivity, but to refine it. Harden where hardness is required. Stay soft where softness is deserved. The warrior's heart is a paradox, firm enough to endure impact, supple enough to remain alive. In the merging of these opposites, something powerful emerges, a self that cannot be exploited, yet refuses to become cruel. A self that stands rooted, unshaken, even when the world becomes a battlefield. Here, hardness is no longer corruption. It is clarity sharpening your form. There is a memory you carry, small yet luminous, of a moment when your softness saved someone. Perhaps it was a quiet gesture, or a forgiveness you didn't have to offer, but it changed something in the other person, maybe even in yourself. That memory haunts you as you harden, as if to ask, if you build walls, will that light disappear? Will the gentleness that once defined you become a ghost? Softness, after all, has never been the enemy. It was only the lack of boundaries that made it dangerous. Forgiveness has always felt like a strange territory. Sometimes you offered it because your heart was vast, other times because you feared conflict, and sometimes because you didn't know how to walk away. That confusion has followed you, creating tension between who you are and who you must become. You begin to see that mercy, without discernment, becomes weakness, and weakness, when exploited, becomes suffering. Yet the opposite is true as well. A life without mercy becomes barren, a desert where nothing meaningful can grow. Musashi knew mercy as a double-edged blade. He spoke of compassion not as softness, but as awareness, the awareness that not every battle requires blood, and not every mistake deserves condemnation. His mercy was not the mercy of a man afraid to fight. It was the mercy of a man who understood the cost of unnecessary conflict. He extended grace with precision, not obligation. He recognized that compassion, when held too loosely, becomes a trap. When held too tightly, becomes indifference. The balance was in knowing when the heart must close and when it must breathe. The revelation emerges. Hardened does not mean closed. Strength and gentleness are not opposites. They are two halves of a complete spirit. A wall can protect, but a doorway can heal. You are not asked to choose between steel and warmth. You are asked to control which one you reveal, and when. In this balance, your humanity does not fade. It deepens. It becomes intentional, not accidental. And from that intention, a new kind of power rises. You begin to feel the merging, a firmness that does not destroy compassion, a compassion that does not compromise boundaries. This is the threshold where mercy breathes, not recklessly, but wisely. There comes a moment when you look back and realize you have survived an inner trial. You emerged from the fire carrying the shape of someone who refused to break. You didn't rise with fanfare or triumph. You rose quietly, with a clarity that feels almost unfamiliar. You feel different, not colder, not harsher, but more defined. The pieces that once scattered in every direction now hold their ground with silent discipline. You sense a pulse inside you that feels ancient, as if some old part of your lineage finally awakened. The fear of becoming unrecognizable still flickers, but it no longer controls you. You understand now that transformation was inevitable. The world was never going to let you remain untouched. But what you feared was never the hardness itself. It was the possibility of losing the soul beneath it. Now you see the truth. Your soul did not disappear. It purified itself in the flames. It shed the parts of you that were too eager to bend, too quick to give, too willing to break. What remains is not a stranger. It is the version of you that should have been allowed to exist all along. Musashi compared the human heart to a sword placed in the forge, heated, hammered, cooled, repeated. The process is not gentle, but it is purposeful. The fire does not destroy the steel. It strengthens it. The hammer does not punish. It shapes. The cooling does not weaken. It stabilizes. Hardness and softness dance in the creation of a blade, each phase necessary, each extreme bringing the steel closer to its true form. In this metaphor, you see yourself clearly. The hardships, the betrayals, the emotional storms, they were all part of the forging, and the revelation settles into your bones. Hardness, when conscious, protects the soul rather than replacing it. It gives form to your inner world, allowing your spirit to endure without dissolving into everyone else's demands. You learn to move like tempered steel, strong, but not rigid, firm, but not brittle, alive, but not exposed. Your heart becomes a guarded flame, steady against the winds that once threatened to extinguish it. Now you stand as a quiet, unwavering force, not soft enough to be broken, not hard enough to be hollow. A balanced spirit shaped by trials, sharpened by pain, stabilized by wisdom. You have learned how to harden without losing the essence that makes you human. You have become the blade that cuts through illusion, the calm presence that does not waver, the soul that survives the fire and walks forward with intention. And as you continue down this silent path, you carry one truth like a hidden mantra beneath your breath. You do not harden to become less. You harden to become whole.